Hello friends, welcome back. I'm going to keep this as ADHD friendly as possible. If you want to skip straight to the test, you can click on the chapters indicated on the timeline in the video below. But there is some really important information that you should know before taking this test so that you don't self-diagnose yourself incorrectly. First and foremost, guys, I am not a doctor or a medical professional. This test can't officially diagnose you. It's important to remember that these symptoms can be mimicked by various conditions such as PTSD, anxiety, depression, and other lifestyle stresses such as a lack of sleep, sleep apnea, poor diet, and so on. So the DSM-5-TR defines the diagnostic criteria as a persistent pattern of inattention and/or hyperactivity, impulsivity, that interferes with functioning or development, and is characterized by at least 6 or more, for adolescents at least 5, inattentive traits and/or hyperactive traits that have persisted for 6 months to a degree that is inconsistent with developmental level and that negatively impacts directly on social, academic, and occupational activities. As with other tests, this is usually done in a method that rates how often and how severe you experience symptoms. So when going through each symptom, ask yourself how often you experience this, on a scale of never to very often. ADHD only applies if you have been suffering symptoms since before the age of 12. There are 3 recognized types, and that is inattentive type, hyperactive type, and the combined type. The subtypes will often be indicated by whether or not you have more inattentive traits than hyperactive, and vice versa. Now, are you ready? Let's dive into the test. Okay, so the inattentive traits fails to pay attention to detail. You may make careless mistakes very frequently, and you may miss certain details in tasks that you're trying to carry out. It can be happening in all kinds of situations, from schoolwork, on your job, and social situations as well. Difficulty sustaining attention in tasks and during conversations. You might find yourself trying to focus on one task, but you keep getting sidetracked, and you may also find it hard to focus during a conversation and listening to what people are saying to you. You may find lots of people think that you're not listening to them, or you just miss out on certain details and you mishear things very frequently. Lots of misunderstandings can happen this way, and it can cause problems for you in your social life, in your work life, and cause arguments with partners and so on. Difficulty keeping belongings and schedules in order. If you're the kind of person that continually leaves places in a mess, if it's something that you feel you really struggle to stay on top of and it's not in your control, and you may find it very difficult to organize your life in general. It's just the way your brain is wired, because you're very scattered. It's hard to get that structured method into your life, so you have to be very meticulous with planning as a person with ADHD. Losing things necessary for tasks and activities. You may find yourself misplacing items a lot, losing certain items, and forgetting to bring items with you to certain places that you are expected to bring them. Easily distracted by extraneous stimuli, and including thoughts as well. If you're the kind of person that struggles greatly with trying to focus on a task, it can be little things around you in the environment that can trigger you to be distracted. It can also be your own thoughts going from one thing to the other. If there's things going on in the environment around you, it's almost as though what you're trying to focus on becomes a blind spot and everything else gets volumized very greatly, because your executive functioning makes it incredibly difficult to filter out extraneous stimuli. Avoiding tasks requiring sustained mental effort. Deep down you know that you're going to find it difficult, so therefore you're going to avoid it on a subconscious level. And this is where procrastination really comes into play. Are you notoriously bad at starting projects, living your life on last-minute mode? Do you only get a sense of urgency to do things when it's at red alert? Forgetful in daily activities, chores, and errands. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. This is why people with ADHD really need a structure, and they need to take notes and have something visible in front of them so that they can refer to their responsibilities on a daily basis. ADHD affects a person's memory recall. If it's something that's very important, a person with ADHD is more likely to remember it, but if it's little things, that's where they tend to trip up. Failure to follow through on instructions and commitments. Previous symptoms such as distractibility and avoiding responsibility that requires a lot of mental effort can come into play in this trait. Now let's go on to the hyperactive traits. Fidgeting and discomfort when expected to remain seated. Are you the kind of person that constantly fidgets like this? Always doing something, always playing with their hands. You can't quite keep still in your seat, and you feel this overwhelming urge to get up and do something else, and it's very hard for you to stay focused because you've just got so much energy inside you. Talking excessively and blurting out words. You may find yourself saying things inappropriately at a bad time, embarrassing yourself and other people, upsetting people, and finishing other people's sentences. Impatience and difficulty waiting turn. Are you the kind of person that's always going to have something now? Are you always trying to seek out stimulation? Do you avoid things that require lots of patience? Do you avoid waiting for things that are far ahead into the future? Do you prefer to go with the flow and do things in the now? Impulsive decision making before considering the outcomes. It might be doing something that requires a lot of commitment and then realizing later that you just don't have what it takes to follow through with it. It could be impulse spending. Mental restlessness and struggling to relax. Chances are if you're fidgety, you're at least physically hyperactive, but you're probably mentally hyperactive as well. You probably have lots of thoughts rushing through your head every day. You could be quite an anxious, flighty person, and you may struggle to sleep at night. Interrupting in conversations and intruding on others. Do you find yourself butting into conversations, or do you find yourself interrupting people and finishing their sentences? When this happens, you're probably thinking about what you want to say, and that impulsivity makes you blurt it out prematurely. It could also be a fear of missing out and always feeling like you've got to be involved, because you're trying to seek that stimulation. And finally, hyperfocus or hyperfixation on ideas or topics of interest. Even though ADHDers often have an issue with trying to focus, when it comes to things that they're passionate about or something that they're overthinking about a lot, it completely dominates the forefront of the person's mind. Part of this is because of the stimulation that person gets from thinking about those things and going down into a rabbit hole and getting very immersed in those thoughts and ideas. Finally, we're on to the emotional traits, the extra, lesser-known characteristics of ADHD. So the first one is emotional dysregulation. It's a well-known phenomenon that people with ADHD often struggle with dealing with emotions and feel emotions very intensely. They can have anger issues, they can feel sadness very intensely, they can feel happiness very intensely, easily overwhelmed, and a low stress tolerance. This is also tied into the emotional dysregulation aspect, and a person with ADHD finds it very easy to get frustrated and overwhelmed. They may also be able to cope with far less in their lives, and they may use certain substances to cope with stress in life. Highly sensitive to rejection and criticism. There's a term in the ADHD community called rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD for short, that makes a person with ADHD very sensitive socially and emotionally. It can really overwhelm them, and it can make them hyperfixate on those negative thoughts, and it tends to blow up things out of proportion on a massive scale. Finally, self-doubt and low self-esteem. A person with ADHD has probably lived a life full of feeling inferior and incompetent. They may have been scorned from a very young age and all the way through their adolescence into adulthood. They may feel like they're not capable of things and that they're a failure. Okay, well, thanks for your patience and taking part in this test. I really hope that this has shed some light for you and it's given you an idea of whether or not you can have ADHD, and if so, I really do encourage you to go and get a proper diagnosis because it could change your life. You can get access to medications and therapy. Don't procrastinate. Don't put it off any longer. Take action now. Make a note. Do whatever you've got to do because it's going to help you have a much better insight into the way you operate and who you are in this world. For more information on how to get tested for ADHD, you can visit a past video that I made, which has got lots of links and information in the video for support and psychiatrists that specialize in ADHD. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Stay strong and stay focused. Done.